So let's talk about coral reefs. Corals are animals, all right? They are marine invertebrates. They secrete calcium carbonate to form a hard skeleton. They are very colorful because they have a symbiotic relationship with a pigmented organism called zooxanthellae. Zooxanthellae live inside the coral polyps, okay, and they have the ability to photosynthesize. So corals develop this symbiotic relationship with zooxanthellae because corals provide zooxanthellae with protected environments, and zooxanthellae provide corals with organic compounds that they produce through photosynthesis. Coral bleaching is the event where corals become white due to stress-induced expulsion or death of their symbiotic protozoa zooxanthellae, okay, and the corresponding loss of pigmentation within the protozoa. So this picture shows you a colorful coral reef, and certain stresses that the corals experience, including that due to global warming, can cause coral bleaching, and what we see is the whitening effect of these corals because they have expelled their symbiotic protozoa, the colorful zooxanthellae. Okay, right. So as we saw from the video, stress can result in coral bleaching as the zooxanthellae are expelled from the coral's tissues. Okay, and a common cause of this stress is increase in sea temperatures. Okay, once bleaching begins, it tends to continue even without continuing stress. And prolonged periods of bleaching or intense warming, as we saw in the video just now, may eventually lead to the coral's death. Now, if the coral colony survives this stressful period, zooxanthellae may return, but they may require weeks or months to return to normal density. After that, new residents of the reef, new species may come back to live in the reef, okay, but they may be of different species. So this changes the makeup of the marine ecosystems dramatically. So once this biological diversity is reduced, as is often the case once a stressful period is over, biological diversity is often reduced. And once this happens, this makes the reef even less resilient to future environmental changes. Now let's take a look at the factors that will lead to coral bleaching. The first two common ones are temperature change and ocean acidification. Now, these two are brought upon by excessive emission of greenhouse gases. Climate change can also kill corals by changing their life cycles and reproductive processes. Okay, rising sea levels will also cut out light that the corals like. Okay, and extreme weather events can also physically damage corals. Let's look at temperature change, which is the most common cause of coral bleaching. Now, over the years, the average global sea surface temperatures has steadily increased. And the reason for this is because over 90% of the heat trapped in greenhouse gases in our atmosphere is absorbed by our oceans. Okay, but because water has high capacity for heat, okay, the increase in global surface sea temperature is still not as high as that of atmospheric temperatures. Okay, nonetheless, corals, they thrive in shallow tropical waters, and they are very sensitive to temperature changes. That's why most corals, right, like the branching corals such as the table coral, they are more susceptible to this stress following such temperature changes. Okay, only certain larger coral colonies such as porites are able to withstand these extreme temperature shocks. Overall, corals are temperature sensitive, okay, and most of them will succumb to the increased temperature rise of the sea. Okay, now let's talk about the effects of ocean acidification. As much as 1/3 of atmospheric carbon dioxide is absorbed by the oceans. So as you know, the carbon dioxide will react with seawater to form carbonic acid, and this results in ocean acidification. As the coral skeletons are made up of calcium carbonate, their skeletons will be dissolved. This reduces the ability for corals to build or create their skeletons, and it will also compromise their fertilization process. Next, corals generally grow best at depths shallower than 70 meters. Now, because global warming causes sea levels to rise, corals will find themselves in deeper waters. So as sea levels continue to rise, most corals cannot survive because they will receive insufficient sunlight. And their symbiotic protozoa, the zooxanthellae, requires the sunlight to photosynthesize and provide nutrients both for themselves and also for the corals. Okay, and for this reason, corals rely on some sufficient source of sunlight to survive. Okay, and as the corals find themselves in deeper waters because of the sea level rise, they will also find themselves in colder temperatures. And as I mentioned before, corals are very temperature sensitive. They thrive in tropical, shallow, warm waters, right? So they do not like the temperatures be too high. They also do not like it when the temperatures are too low. Finally, you know that global warming will increase the incidence of extreme weather events, and so tropical storms and heavier rainfalls may increase, and this may cause more physical damage to the coral reefs. Okay, and so this will also lead other coastal ecosystems and coastal communities to be affected as well. For example, Hurricanes Hugo and Marilyn, which hit the US Virgin Islands National Park in 1989 and in 1995, respectively, did massive damage to the coral ecosystems.